All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of Unlearn with us. This is our second take at this. Mike and I have been working at connecting, and if we finally made it. Our first attempt was Wi-Fi issues, so let's fingers crossed this works out. Mike Yates, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Mike, I came across Mike on LinkedIn. He's very active on LinkedIn and posting amazing stuff about education, and especially, things that I really truly believe in. You have a podcast that's called, is it now School Sucks? I was going to say Education Sucks. School Sucks, which I can only imagine. Some people either really, really like it or maybe are offended by it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's kind of the point too. Yeah.
yeah. So I've been following along with your podcast there, and then I don't know if you do it daily, but seems to be you've always got something very meaningful and something really thought provoking about education and the stuff that you're doing. Mike is a two-time TEDx speaker. We were just talking about this. I've watched both of his TED Talks, both really, really great. Really great messages about school and about privilege. And is an educator in Texas. And I've been learning a little bit more, and I can't wait to dive more deeper into it about Alpha, the school that you've been a huge part of. And yes, can't wait to hear more about that. So, Mike, tell us about yourself. Give us some of your background. How'd you get into teaching? What was school like for you? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Houston, Texas, which is one of the biggest cities in the United States. And my mother was a teacher growing up. So I saw the classroom from two different vantage points, which was one as a student and one as the child of a teacher. I remember a lot of days waiting on her to finish grading papers, and I'd be at school super late. I just remember thinking like, gosh, this sucks. Like, this is like why? And one day she said to me, she's like, hey, never ever become a teacher. It's too much work for not enough money. And I thought, okay, so I, like a lot of kids, I hated school growing up. It didn't feel relevant for me. I felt like teachers knew things that they were holding back from me. Like they knew the game, but they weren't telling me, and so I sort of went through school with this cynicism. I had a really bad experience in the 7th grade with a teacher that accused me of plagiarism for something that I did not plagiarize. And I tried to battle this, and I lost that battle. And that was the day that I realized, as 12, 13-year-old kid, that the school system was more interested in its operation than it was in my success. They would rather move the process along than have me upset the apple cart. So I walked away from that thinking that grades are stupid, number one, because the grade was distracting this woman from the fact that I had put a lot of work into this paper. And number two, I realized that a lot of teachers were not actually on my side. But when I got to high school, I met the greatest teacher that I've ever known, which is Mr. Martin, who cared for me and for every student that walked through the door of his classroom like no other. I mean, like, if my mom was late to pick me up from school, he would just take me home. Like, he was the speech coach. I was on the speech team. He pushed me to become senior class president. Like, my high school experience, I owe a lot of it, basically pretty much all of it, to him, and an involved mother who really cared. So when I went to college, I was determined not to have a regular job because I was bad at them. Like, I was bad at retail. I was bad at service. And I have ADHD, and I knew, like, I will not survive in those worlds. So I was looking for jobs on campus and different things. I wanted to start my professional career as soon as I set foot on a college campus. And I didn't know that what I wanted to do. I changed my major 6 times in college. Um, Sometimes after being that major for one day, I walked out and changed. But my freshman year, I got this opportunity to teach a music and poetry class in a juvenile detention center. And it was a last stop center. So these kids had done things that were bad enough to land them a prison sentence after they left. And I just remember the impact that this program had on them. And so I was hooked. And that's where I said, you know what, I'm going to work to fix this broken system. So that's what I've been doing ever since. I went into the classroom and I tried to fix it from the inside. I tried to fight in a public school, private school, charter school. And then I decided to start my own school. And through the pursuit of that, I came across this wacky little school that was called Emergent Academy at the time. And we've now rebranded and we're called Alpha. And that's where I am now.
Wow. Yeah, I can, there's so many correlations of your world to where I was. I was opposite. I think I had a better time in elementary school, and then high school just ruined it for me. It was just, I think at that point, it really just, I was always being told, no, that's not the way we do it. That's a great idea, but no, that's not what I asked you to do. It was more about the compliance piece for that. And I think also I had a horrible experience with a grade 12 English teacher, and where I was, we actually had to do grade 13. So I had him for both grade 12 and grade 13, and grade 13 was what determined whether or not we got into university. And I played competitive sports, and I remember my parents coming in to do parent-teacher interview, and he told my parents that advanced English was not for jocks, and that he believed I had the reading level of a grade 8 and that I would go nowhere. And so yeah, so that I totally get where you're coming from. And then moving into education, and I don't think it's the norm for most people to become educators when they haven't had a really great experience. And I think for me, and probably yourself, trying to do things differently really threatens sort of what they know school is, right? And what they enjoyed and what worked for them.
Yeah.
They wanted to recreate it. So that's I don't think that's the norm. I don't know. What do you think? Like for teachers, do you think that most teachers get into it because they liked school?
You know, I do. And I would actually love to look into that more to figure out if I can put some data behind this answer. But you know, most of the teachers that I have worked with, I have not met a whole lot of teachers that said, you know what, I hated school growing up. As a matter of fact, you know, I was hired sight unseen at Alpha.
Mm-hmm.
I interviewed with the director of the school. He asked me the question. He said, how do you feel about school growing up? And I said, I absolutely hated school growing up. And for him, he was like, oh, great. Like, that's the way I know if somebody's right for this school, because so many times you hear teachers, oh, I love school. I loved English. And so I studied English in college. I'm like, well, I hated every last one of those subjects. I skipped class a lot. You know, it was not for me. And so, yeah, I do think it's definitely very rare. Definitely rare.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's talk more about Alpha. So you've done all your stuff in public education in the private sector and charter schools. You move over to Alpha. What is this? You've co-created it, or tell me more about Alpha.
Yeah. So I'm on staff here, and one of the things I've had the unique opportunity to have a hand in the creation of some stuff here, which is exciting. And part of the reason why I came here is you know, not necessarily creative freedom, but the ability to have impact. And I knew that with the school being very new and very young and doing a lot of things differently, I would have that opportunity. So essentially what we do at Alpha is that we prioritize really two things. We prioritize love of school, and we prioritize teaching life skills. There is a third thing that we prioritize, which is learning twice as fast. But that is only so that we can prioritize number one and number two, really. So we use adaptive learning software, which is like your Khan Academies, iExcel, Dreambox Learning, apps like that, to accelerate the learning process of your core academic skills. So math, science, reading, writing, kids are on apps and they spend 2 hours a day doing that. The rest of the day is spent explicitly teaching life skills. Like I just got out of a workshop that I'm teaching with some high school students where they're having to learn to give presentations, but not in the traditional way. I gave them all an old Shark Tank product, one that sucks like the Pop It Pal or like the Squirrel Buster. And they're having to create a pitch that is better than the original founder's pitch.
Okay.
And so they're going through this whole process. I've created all these like, games and like intentional hiccups along the way. But that's just an example of like, we may have a workshop on flipping stuff on eBay. We have a workshop, where kids are going to have to redesign the city of Austin, where we live. So all of those things, we're hoping to teach this set of life skills that we've identified that we believe are really good for kids, and that kids have said, like, I think I need this for the future. So I think, just the fact that we listen to children here, there's almost no rules here, which is exciting. This is a school that I wish that I had gone to and that I wish my kids have access to. So that's what is so special about this and what's so exciting about having a chance to build something like this. So what I do here, I built the public speaking program from the ground up that goes from, essentially second grade up to 12th grade. Our school is K through 12.
Okay.
And so at this point, I work with almost every kid in the school. I work from age 8 to age 18. I am working with those students. And it's been a unique challenge. I have also, this is really just by me raising my hand and doing the work, but I am leading up an effort to create diversity, equity, and inclusion in our school. We formed a new team that is going to create resources, build programming, and make sure that as we expand, because we're about to build 3 new schools, as we expand, and we're doing it by fall 2021. So in the middle of a pandemic, we're about to build 3 new schools.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that as we launch those schools, that we are not recreating a cycle that has always existed in the world, where the wealthy elite have the most access to the best form of education, but where every single child can access this. Because we recognize, even though we have said that as an organization, we believe every kid in the world can learn this way. We have not always made the moves that point to that. And so what's beautiful about this organization is that we don't have to consult the school board. I mean, literally, the director of our school, he and I talked this summer about this, and he was like, you know what, let's go, let's do it. Let's do what we need to do. And that's it. Like, there's no other approval or anything. Like, we're just moving full steam ahead. So that's kind of what I do here and why it's beautiful to do it here.
Awesome. Okay, so I've written 3 things down that I want to go a little deeper into. So I've written down apps, I've written down workshops, and I've written down diversity. So I really want to dig deeper into each of those. So, okay, so I think I saw, I don't know if it was on I can't remember if it was on another podcast or something, but I heard you talking about the apps and how, some parents are going to come to you and be like, 2 hours of my kids on apps, like, are you crazy? So tell us more about what this looks like. What are these apps?
Yeah, so the one thing that I think is really to note about this school is that we are not an online school. We're not a virtual school. We are a physical brick and mortar school. I'm actually sitting in school right now. Like, we're a physical brick and mortar school, because everybody assumes when they hear app-based learning, the thing about education and having conversations about innovating and changing education is that everybody has the same mindset about what school is, because globally, we've almost stamped out this cookie cutter model of school. So everybody's like, where are your lockers? Where's your cafeteria? Where's your theater? Where's your basketball gym? And we're like, we don't have any of that because we don't need it. So kids, essentially, if you come into our school at about 9 a.m., kids are laying on the floor. They're sitting on couches, bean bags, hanging out with each other, but doing their work. It looks very much like a WeWork or a co-working space. As a matter of fact, that's what we mimic the most, is like a co-working space for children. And everybody's working on their own independent goals. They're doing their apps in whatever order they see fit. Sometimes you may have a student that says, today I'm really behind on math, so I'm not going to do my language app. so I can do more math. Kids are setting their own goals, and there's adults that we call guides that are circulating around the building to help kids if they get stuck, to help kids set goals, to help hold kids accountable. Like, hey, you said you were going to do 55 minutes of science today. It's 30 minutes and you look like you're quitting. What's going on, right? And so our role is not to lord over them and be the bearers of knowledge, but it is to show them where they can find resources so they can learn on their own. A lot of people ask me about the effectiveness of apps.
Mm-hmm.
The apps are, the thing is, the apps work. So a lot of people don't verbalize this at Alpha. And one of the things I love about this place is that we have chosen to have no ego about what we're doing here. Never once do we want to come on the internet and say what everybody else is doing sucks and you should do what we're doing. Because, you know, one of the things I personally believe, and I believe the school holds this belief as well, is that there should be as many models of school as there are types of learners,
Mm-hmm.
so that no kid has nowhere to be. We're just one model of school that's really awesome, and we work really hard at that. But you know, the thing about the apps is that what we found is that by using these apps in the way that we do, like no one else does, we actually have kind of created a data set that nobody has.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to figure out all these things that nobody's thought about. Like we're trying to see if you can improve, if you can grow by spending a certain amount of minutes in an app. So equating growth to minutes and time on task.
Mm-hmm.
But what we know is that on the MAP standardized test, which is an adaptive standardized test that over 11 million kids in the US take every year, our students perform, or any kid that's been with us for a year or longer, they perform in the 90th percentile of at least one academic subject. And then of the kids that have been with us for a year longer, we have 20, so the 90th percentile number is 67% of our kids.
Okay.
23% of them perform in the 9th percentile of one or more apps.
Okay.
One or more academic subjects. So we have data to prove that the apps work. The other place where I challenge people that might be a little different than most staff members is I tell parents, like, look, go prove to me that your 6th grade science teacher was effective 90% of the time.
Right.
Like, go show me. And they have no idea. It's a system that's just built on trust, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Do your kids take those standardized tests? Do they have to, or?
In Texas, we have the STAR test that most students take. We do not take that.
Okay.
We use the MAPS test as a benchmark for students and for parents, so that kids just know how they're doing.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily decide their placement in the school. You know, we've built our own academic continuum and stuff like that. So like the MAPS test does not decide their placement in the school. It is not we don't use it punitively. It's not even a summative assessment for them because they take it 3 times a year. We just use it to a student, like, here's how far you've grown. So distance traveled here is way more important than like the arrival.
Right. There was something I wanted to ask about that. Now I've lost it. Should have written it down. Okay, let's move on to workshops. So I do my 2 hours of apps in the morning. I'm doing sort of like, is it math and reading? Is that generally what the apps are?
Math, reading, science. When you get to high school, you got history. There's writing apps, computer science. We have an app for almost everything.
Okay. Okay. Have you created these apps, or are these the apps that you've vetted that have been created elsewhere?
Apps that we have like vetted. These we don't own any of these.
Okay.
These are apps that we actually have one person. Her whole job is to research and find the best apps for us to use.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so workshops. So you do a public speaking workshop, like you said, for K to 12. What other, like, do the kids say, oh, you know, I was this morning looking at, I don't know, mitosis or whatever they're looking at in science or whatever. Are they able to say, oh, I'd like a workshop on this, or how does that work?
So they definitely have input. So one of the things we do is, so any guide here, any adult that's working here, they will prepare a workshop and then present that workshop to students. and students have a choice to sign up, similar to like a college course, right?
Okay.
And sign up for a 6 or 7 week session.
Okay.
And the offerings are not, they're not the core academic offerings. Sometimes you can find like, we do have science workshops. We have this amazing science workshop called PFX, which is like, it's taking special effects from movies and having kids reproduce them. But the goal of the workshop is actually to teach kids how to follow instructions.
Okay.
So there's all these different challenges where like, if you don't follow the instructions, you're gonna fail, right?
Right.
And we actually hope that kids take shortcuts so they can come to Elise, who is like, she's the guide that leads that workshop. And she is like, I'm telling you, she's the greatest science teacher on the face of the earth. She loves when they fail, so that they can come to her and she can say, well, look, go back to step number 1,
Yeah.
where you clearly skipped, Yeah. And so they have choices at every level of learner. I'm also teaching a workshop where I am tricking kids into doing public speaking by having them learn to perform magic tricks.
Okay, yeah, I saw you post that on LinkedIn. I liked how you said, do you think David Blaine's mom ever told him, or teachers ever told him that magic sucked or something?
Yeah, and he followed me on Twitter.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like it was one of my kids the students were like, I dare you to communicate with David Blaine.
Yeah.
We've been watching videos of him. He's like the boss level, like we can't figure out how he does what he does.
Oh yeah.
We're convinced that he is an actual wizard. So we actually, at the end of this workshop, kids are going to win an award. The best magic performer is going to win an award, and we've named it the David Blaine Wizard of Alpha Award. So
imagine if David Blaine came and gave the award.
So that's what I'm working on now. I DM'd him on Twitter.
Yeah.
So if anybody who's listening to this, if you know David Blaine, reach out to him. I need to talk about being a part of this. As soon as I showed them, I was like, guys, look, David Blaine followed me. And they were like, oh my gosh, now he has to come to this school and do magic.
Yeah.
So they're all excited about the magic. And I recently had a student, she came up to me a couple of days ago and she was like, you know what? I know exactly what you're doing, Mike. And I was like, what? She says, you're pulling off your own little sleight of hand here. I'm excited. I'm having fun doing magic, but you're really just trying to get me to give speeches. I know what you're doing. And I was like, well, that's exactly what I'm doing. She's like, I'm fine with it. It's fun. I just want you to know that I know.
Yeah.
Like, well, great. Like, because the truth is that public speaking classes suck. They're boring.
Yeah.
Like if I just have kids do speeches all day, they're going to hate it. They're going to hate me. They're going to hate school. Right. And I don't want any of those things. And so it's more fun for all of us if we wrap it up in something that most adults would look at and say, that's dumb.
Yeah.
And I love that. Yeah, it is dumb, but it's dumb fun. And they're going to be better communicators than most kids.
Yeah, that's not dumb. That's science and physics, and I don't know. And, yeah. Well, I remember one of my students last year, like wouldn't normally get up in front of the class, was rare. Like he would talk, but he's not like your stereotypical great speaker. Anyways, he started leading this project that he was really connected to. It was a family charity that he'd been involved in, and we were working with another school. All of a sudden he gets up and he's given this like 30-minute presentation. He's got slides, he's talking, and again, it's exactly what you're saying, is he cared about it and felt really good about talking about it. Felt like he was the leader, and it just went right. And it wasn't about public speaking. It was about the passion that he had, or in your case, the fun that they're having, which is awesome. Absolutely. So, okay. So they take these workshops for, you said 6 to 10 weeks, or
6 to 7 weeks.
Okay. 6 to 7 weeks. And this is all grades, like kindergarten to grade 12.
Yeah. Okay.
And so if I'm in high school, oh, I lost you. They turned out the lights on you.
I'm here, but
you have
motion sensors. Sorry.
You gotta do jumping jacks.
Yeah.
So if I'm in high school, and like I've been doing a lot of research related to homeschooling and unschooling, and I think when you look at a lot of alternative, places like Alpha, a lot of that philosophy is found there, right? and I know I just had a conversation yesterday with somebody who had started up a school here in Ontario, that had there were no grades, there was no accreditation, nothing. But she said selling that to parents was just so hard because they were so concerned that how is my kid going to get into college or university? You know, so do you guys have accreditation, or how does that work?
We have some form of accreditation, and I don't know what it is.
Okay.
Um, uh, there are all sorts of types of accreditation, and the thing about them, my personal belief, this is not Alpha's standpoint.
Okay.
Personal belief is that accreditation is BS, and it's red tape for no reason. Because when I thought deeply about this, I taught at a school where I had a student who lived in a house with no running water. He had a very hard family situation, and he came to me in the 6th grade without the ability to read at all.
Hmm.
And I remember spending the year getting my class started, and I was forced to create project-based learning without lecture because I wanted to spend the time with this kid to make sure that before he walked out of my classroom, that he could not just read, but read on grade level. And so I said, look, man, like all we're gonna do, me and you, is read every day. And he was like, oh, I would love that. Because he said to me, I can't read, but I want to go to college. Right. So at the point in time where there are school environments where you have students that are making it to the 6th grade without the ability to read at all, that are accredited, I don't understand what accreditation even means. It surely doesn't mean that you're providing for kids. When I think of some of the environments that I've worked in, and under some of the school leaders that I've worked with school leaders that have stolen money from the school, accredited schools. So when I see those things, I'm like, like I don't know how important it is. Accreditation doesn't mean much. And then when I see the sheer amount of accreditation boards there are, and basically all you have to do is pay money and comply with like 3 or 4 things, to me, accreditation doesn't mean very much. But I also understand that in the world, colleges and universities, like that matters. So for us, like our high school, my basic understanding of this is that our high school is accredited and the rest of our school is either not accredited or has a different version of accreditation.
Okay.
The truth about accreditation is that the truth about college is that nothing that you do from kindergarten until like grade 8 is it even does in the US, it doesn't even follow you to college.
Right.
So you could be a straight F student until you show up in the 9th grade, and that's all your university will see.
Right.
I know that we've prioritized what's most important to get students into university, because the goal here is to get students in the top 20 universities in the United States. And the reason for that, everybody hears that and they go, oh, that sounds elitist, but it's not. It is not that we don't want students to go to universities that are not top 20. It is that if your goal is to shoot for Harvard, then you can get into Appalachian State and the University of Texas and in anywhere else because you get into Harvard. So it's really just to aim high and not to be elite.
Okay. So you talked about the diversity piece and, offering this to everyone. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I've recently started my own school, and I've come up against some pushback because I left public education, and I felt guilty myself leaving public education, because I wanted to be able to offer this to everybody. But it is private to start. My goal is to work with funders and different youth organizations, because mine's virtual. Then I can pull from different areas. And so I'm working on that right now. So I'm assuming Alpha is private.
Yes.
So
Yep.
how do you change, like you said, that the system that society has just gone along with, and how do you open that up to everybody?
So it is going to be a really, really long road to do it. And it's hard, and there's no blueprint for it yet.
Right.
So essentially, um, education is interesting because we hold public education as being the most virtuous type of education you can participate in, either as a student or as a teacher. Um, and I don't, I don't subscribe to that at all. To some extent, I think, especially here in the U.S., I think in many cases, signing up to be a teacher in a public school is like signing up to be abused every day. I mean, you don't get paid what you're worth. You often deal with like unspeakably awful things, and I'm not talking about student behavior. I'm talking about the way you're treated by people in your district who are supposed to be advocating for you. Like, quick story, I worked at a school district here in Texas, and I was trying to create a program with my students where we would partner with Whole Foods to get salad bars sponsored by them, paid for by them. So this would be free to the school. Salad bars for our lunch program. And the district actually fought against students who were driving this effort. And like, that is, I have no interest in that. And I also don't necessarily see any form of education or teaching as more or less virtuous than the other. There's something that a lot of people are just going to have to accept, like what you're doing by building a virtual school, and you should feel the confidence to go forward in this, because it takes two things. It takes a radically different and creative approach to figure out funding, and it takes a Robin Hood mentality almost. And like, you have to be profitable so that you can provide for people, right? The innovative solution you have unless you're profitable. So right now, our school in Austin, Texas services the most affluent families in the city. And it is not like we're not doing that so that we can take their tuition dollars and go spread it across the world. We're doing that because it's just, quite frankly, the model or the population that we're attracting right now. It is the group of people that can afford our school right now. It's the group of people who live in close proximity, because we have a campus in downtown Austin. And if you know anything about the history of Austin, if you are an evil person who's looking to discard low income people and people of color, this is the city where you would come to learn to do that.
Okay.
And you know, like, Austin has done a masterful job at doing that. And so where we're positioned in the city, that's just who we're attracting. And it's there is no concept of like, we're going to take from the rich and give to the poor. It's not, that doesn't exist here.
Mm-hmm.
But to some extent, you have to figure out how to encourage families to finance the education of other people that are not them.
Yeah.
And to buy into a larger mission. There's a school that, and I have mixed feelings about the school, but they do this particularly well. It's called the Ron Clark Academy.
Okay.
And they have a sliding scale of tuition. They cost $18,500 a year to attend, but the average family pays $40 a month.
Okay.
Because from what I know, they tell families that can pay full price, your tuition is literally helping to finance the education of a child who could not access this without you. And then they tell them thank you, right? I mean, I think so. So in short, like, diversity, true diversity, like accomplishing that takes a long time, and it takes a lot of creativity. So what we're doing here is we've established a group of staff members at our campus that are going to meet every month. They're going to at least each week, vetting resources to try to build diversity, equity, and inclusion into our content. So we don't want to necessarily have an entire workshop on anti-racism or on institutional discrimination, but we can figure out ways to interweave those concepts to teach them through other things. So for example, I'm running a workshop where I'm teaching kids to do storytelling. The best storytelling organization in the US is called The Moth. True Stories Told Live. They're on YouTube. A lot of people know The Moth. I went and was trained to do their storytelling workshops. So I'm doing that, and then I've infused that with a great friend of mine named Irshad Manji. She runs an organization called Moral Courage University. I've taken this concept of moral courage and fused it with the storytelling. Moral courage is doing the right thing in the face of adversity. And so the theme of our story slam at the end of this workshop is, what is your moral courage story? right? It is as simple as engaging students in that way. So today we had a discussion. We had a discussion with students, 4 white students, white males, and the question was, when have you experienced racism and you sat by and let it happen? Right. So it's that kind of engagement until we can build the diverse population of people.
Right.
You know, we're going to ask the hard questions like, are we willing to move the location of the school so that more people can access it? When we build a school in Houston, Texas, the question is going to be, where is the optimal location so that multiple income levels, races, socioeconomic backgrounds, like, so I'm thankful that our school is taking this approach, and I'm thankful that they're letting me lead in that area.
Awesome. So the next question kind of relates, well, it definitely relates, you know, just looking at this year, obviously 2020, I've seen so many memes about what 2020 is all about. You know, dealing with pandemic has really obviously changed education. But more so, it's been a year of protests. And there's been a huge spotlight on systemic racism. So I'm curious, and I know you've talked a bit about it with your work with diversity, inclusion, and equity. But what does it mean to be a Black educator right now?
That's a tough question. There are not many of us, honestly. Like, there's not a lot of Black males. In the U.S., the average teacher is a 42-year-old white woman.
Me.
Yeah, but and you know, I think to be a Black educator right now, we actually, I was telling a friend this the other day, like, now is not the time to go into the shell. It may suck, but now is not the time for us to be silent. It is now is the time for us to push. And some people have said to me, well, that's just being reactive. And I say, well, yeah, it's being reactive. But just because it's being reactive does not mean the work is good. It's honestly, to me, it's strategic. So the day that I showed up at Alpha, I knew what the deal was with diversity. I can see. I was the only Black male on staff. I knew that. Everybody that I have referred to, I have strategically referred diverse groups of people to this school. Men and women, Black and brown men and women. And I've 2 of my friends have been hired onto this school, and they are contributing to the diversity of our staff. But the best thing that I can do is wait until the right moment presents itself to tap leadership on the shoulder and say, look, here are the things that I've been noticing. What do you think about these things, right? It just so happened that this summer, with all of the protests, I was able to use that as fuel while people were super, like, hypersensitive to what is happening. People are like, for the first time, I had a conversation with somebody on staff here. They said, for the first time in my life, I have had to consider what life is like for you. And I'm sorry for not considering that earlier. And I said, hey, that's fine, but let's talk about where we go from here, right? So I think the role of the Black educator right now, and what it is to be a Black educator, it is to lead from where you are in your organization. And I really do want to emphasize that term, lead. You have to lead people who know less than you. You have to lead people who have less interest than you. You have to be the first hand raised and the person to put, and it's going to take time. It's going to be exhausting. Like, I like administrative tasks, but I have had to be okay with doing them because I care about this effort at the school. So, like, creating Slack channels and creating boards on Trello and sending emails, I hate that stuff, but I've had to do it because I care that this group comes together more than I care about my hatred. So right now is literally the time for the Black activist educator to be activated inside of each one of us, because, like, there is no greater time. There are no more eyes on these issues than there are today.
Right. And as the 42-year-old white teacher, what can we be doing to support this?
I think, the one thing I've been most encouraged by, I'm going to give her a shout out by name, Hannah Thompson, who works at Alpha. She actually separately, like, without knowing about what I was working on, reached out to the director of our school and said, hey, like how can I be a part of this? And he said, hey, go talk to Mike. And she has been the greatest like support system in this on staff. And she and I have spearheaded this issue together, assembled this team together. We've been on like tons of meetings, phone calls, like just working super hard. And I think that's it. I think it's just like be a hand to do the work. Um, don't assume that you don't know enough, and be okay with not knowing, right? Like what the world needs right now is people who are unafraid to be misunderstood, right? Like you really can always tell somebody, look, I didn't mean to say it that way, and I'm sorry. Feedback is not. The other day, I had a friend of mine on staff say, hey, like yesterday in that meeting that we had on this diversity thing, I felt like you were being pretty arrogant. And I was able to say, look, like I didn't mean it that way. I'm sorry that I came off that way. Now, like we let's move on. Let's keep working on this issue, right? And it's not a big deal. I think I'm not afraid to be misunderstood by people. And I think for the 42-year-old white woman who wants to be a part of this effort, do it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to be misunderstood. Don't be afraid to hurt people's feelings. The worst thing you can do at this time is hurt somebody's feelings. That's it, right? Like I think Donald Trump has, on the world stage, he has, and I normally leave politics out of everything. I'm not a political statement. This is a social statement. He is a person with a large platform, and I believe he would have had this platform whether he was the president or not.
Mm-hmm.
He's an American billionaire, and but I believe that his voice is speaking too loudly right now.
Right.
And it is making people nervous to say what right, like it's making people nervous to offend people because he's so offensive and so polarizing. There's a book called The New White Nationalism that's written by Carol Swain. It is a wonderful book, and what she talks about is how white silence is created by abrasive white voices. So you don't want to see a white person yelling out racist stuff, and then it makes other white people look at that and go, well, I don't want to be that, so I'm just not gonna say anything.
Right.
Because it's safer. But don't play it safe.
Right.
Find a person where you can say, hey, look, this is what I'm thinking. Like, how should I say this? Am I saying it wrong? Like my best friend, he and I are in this fantasy football league. It is a very goofy league. And he was about to pick a team name. I don't remember what the team name was, but he literally like texted me, was like, hey man, this is what I'm thinking for my team name. This is the rationale. Is this racist? And I was like, yeah, don't make that your team name. Love it. Right? Like it was that simple.
Yeah.
Right. And I think one other thing that I will say is that another thing that I would encourage Black educators to do at this time is to believe that people are seeking to understand, and don't be so defensive. And I'm saying that I am the first one to be reactive and defensive, but assume that people have good in their hearts and they're willing to fight this fight with you.
Yeah. I think it's really important. Just being, well, for myself, being a white educator and really wanting, like you said, to be a part of this and to support and to understand, like you said, somebody saying it's been the first time that I've ever really thought about what it'd be like to be in your shoes. I think for the majority of us, we've never done that. And I think also having, like you said, those uncomfortable conversations, we can't shy away from those. It's really important for us to keep talking and to keep asking questions, so that we can support one another. So I think that's so awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't think people really know what they mean when they say systemic racism. Like the term systemic racism, it doesn't refer to an individual person. It means that there are like literal codes, like there is an actual like system, seen or unseen, that is working against a specific group of people. And I think that if we had a better working understanding of that, I actually think it would be easier for white educators and white people to become allies. It would be easier for us to do this collective work, because you're not always going to assume that you know, right now everybody's dragging Robin DiAngelo through the mud for some reason, but I think she still wrote one of the most important books that we can read about race in this country. And yes, I believe that we should read Black and brown authors, but we should also read Fight Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. And she talks about this good, bad binary, where like very good, well-meaning people can be racist, and very bad, ill-meaning people can be racist. And if you understand systemic racism, it actually disarms you in those conversations with people, so that you're less likely to be offended by somebody who just doesn't understand.
Yeah, for sure. I was running a program this summer, and very fortunate, you know, I've been teaching for a long enough time that I have a former student who is 30 years old, which makes me feel really old. But he's become a lawyer, and he works in Toronto, which is our biggest city in Canada, and has become the overseer and the manager of the largest law firm in Canada. And his focus is equity, diversity, and inclusivity. And he came and spoke to the kids about, he really broke it down, what is systemic racism for them. And he gave us sort of the 4 different ways of looking at racism. And you're right, it was really, really powerful for us to like recognize what we do that we didn't know was racist, right? Like what has been around me my whole life, and not even realizing that that is racism. Here in Canada, and we have been dealing with the truth of a cultural genocide of our Indigenous people. And so for me personally, that unfortunately allows me to understand systemic racism in a way, because it was very apparent. You know, we took kids from their home. They had a policy that was to kill the Indian in them. You know, like that right there is just so blatant. So we are really recognizing right now as a country, you know, what was done and has been done over the last 100 years. And I think we need to do the same thing when we're looking at Black history, right? And that was a big component of what Kyle, my former student, was talking about, is really, really understanding the history and like to understand where this has all come from and how this has evolved over time. To you know, oh, I have a Black friend, I'm not racist. Well, no, that's not how it goes, right? So anyways, I completely agree. And I know personally that's been something that I've really been spending time learning and reaching out to, like you said, and Kyle actually supported a group of my students. Like you said, he was kind of our checkpoint, you know, like they did a Minecraft, just like you were talking about bringing in learning about anti-racism. They did a Minecraft museum, and in it they did a historical walk through protest throughout the world. And I didn't know anything about Minecraft before this, but it was unbelievable. And then we did it on the anniversary of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, and we live streamed it, and we had people from all over the world in it watching. And the boys that were doing it, they, you know, talked about the different monuments and how they built them, and you know, what the protest was. But Kyle was our go-to and say, okay, is it appropriate to have this? You know, is it appropriate for these, because they were 3 white boys, you know, doing this? So then anyways, but it was a learning experience for me as well. And it was really great.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Wow, I think I've taken up more time than I had anticipated. I love what you're doing. I want to learn more. When this pandemic is over, I want to come and visit Alpha. It sounds unbelievable. Where can people learn more about you, about Alpha? Anything else?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there a lot. I am using Twitter more and more and really enjoying Twitter for some reason. I've not really been on Twitter before like this, but I'm really enjoying using Twitter to listen to people. So and like collect feedback, just like on the world. So find me on Twitter. My Twitter is at just Mike Yates.
Okay.
And then my website is yatesmike.com. And then really, honestly and truly, there's not a whole lot out there about alpha other than our website, and there's not a lot on the website. The best way to find more about alpha is actually to follow me, because
Okay.
I'm the only voice talking about it.
Yeah. How long has alpha been around?
This is year 3.
Okay.
The school has taken many forms, but what we're doing now, this is year 3.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mike. This has been unbelievable learning, listening. I can't wait to share this with everybody. And I hope you guys, I don't know about you guys, but there's been talk about our schools being shut down again. But I hope you guys don't run into that.
Yeah, so far so good. So far so good. So we'll see.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
No problem. Thank you.